Rebel Rouser. I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7. We're at episode number 1615, and today we're going to do an update on the other movie series in development, and that would be the Benioff and Weiss series and the Rian Johnson trilogy that are in the works. And, you know, we have to use the phrase "in the works" a little bit loosely, because are they really in the works? Well, as I've said before on the podcast, I can't imagine that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss and Rian Johnson are, sitting around in the middle of the work that they're doing and not jotting down notes for themselves about, oh, what about this cool idea or about that cool idea? Like, I'm sure that they are thinking about things, consuming various influences, and making notes for themselves, and jotting down things to follow up on, like all sorts of those sorts of general, like, creative mishmash ideas, just capturing things in the moment as they pass through, and then just saying, all right, I've got it for later. We'll see if there's anything to be done with it or not, and just going on from there. But beyond that, I don't think there's anything really happening. And the reason I think this is because, as far as news reports go for either of those two projects, the Rian Johnson trilogy or the Benioff and Weiss series, there's been precious little news to report. In fact, really, the news is more about what they are in the middle of right now, as opposed to what is going to be on tap for them. As far as Benioff and Weiss goes, they've made it clear that they are not going to work on Star Wars until Game of Thrones is done. So Game of Thrones being done, you could kind of read two ways, but it used to be that it almost seemed like they were talking about, done in the sense of, hey, it's done, it's in HBO's hands, and they can run with it, and everything's fine. But that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like it's going to be done after Game of Thrones is done, like the run is done. And so it's supposed to be coming in April of 2019. We haven't heard the actual date yet, but that means that it's going to be done by the end of May, and I believe it has to be done around that time anyway to make sure that the season is complete for Emmy Award consideration. So, the timing is around there. But if you think about that, then they're not going to get started until mid-2019. That means that we're probably not looking at a first movie from them until late 2022, it seems like. And if Disney decides to let Star Wars keep the Christmas time slot, because they're giving it back with episode 9, for example, then 2022 seems like the year in which we would get one. Now, think about that, and then think about Rian Johnson. Right now, he is actually shooting a movie called Knives Out, and bizarrely enough, he's actually shooting it comparatively right next door in Massachusetts. So he's doing that, and filming started, I believe, October 30th. And if you project the production time, right now there isn't a date set for the release of the movie, but it seems like it would probably be kind of close to contention with episode 9, bizarrely enough. Like, the timing is such that it could theoretically be released around episode 9, probably a couple months earlier, maybe October of 2019, depending on how fast the editing gets done and all of that stuff. But he's not going to start probably until the beginning of 2020 in his work on his trilogy, the actual, like, really getting down into the trenches and doing the writing and the development of it. So if that's the case, then we're probably talking 2023 for Rian Johnson's first movie. And so suddenly the whole talk about how they're, doing Star Wars movies, it gets a little bit out of whack from what we had thought previously. And I think some of this also is affected by Indiana Jones moving to 2021 as well. And the whole idea of, well, how many films per year can Lucasfilm really support? And, we saw that, things got a little bit tight from a promotion perspective when they were doing more than one in the space of a year, specifically with The Last Jedi and Solo: A Star Wars Story. And that's, of course, also considering that there are the Marvel movies and the Pixar movies and the Disney movies to contend with as well. And suddenly the slate of releases gets very, very tight that way. But there was a time that we thought that we were going to get to see a movie in 2020 that was a Star Wars story standalone movie, and it seems like that's not going to happen. And now it seems like we're not going to get another Star Wars movie, if this projection is right, until 2022. So we're going to go 3 years without a Star Wars movie, which is insane until you start to consider the whole streaming series thing. And I really think that, the news report that came out around, that one guy whose name now escapes my memory, who asked Kathleen Kennedy at a special screening of Black Panther about the Boba Fett movie, and her saying the Boba Fett movie is 100% dead and that they're solely focused on the Mandalorian. And again, just this, we're getting it secondhand, so, how dead is dead, who knows for sure. But the idea that, they could be saying something like, we're focusing 100% on the Mandalorian, and then knowing that the Cassian Andor series is coming after that, well, instead of one movie a year, if we're getting one streaming series a year, we're going from 2 hours of cinematic production to 10 hours of cinematic production a year. And you could really call it cinematic production, especially considering that we know The Mandalorian is going to be one of the most expensive TV series ever produced at $10 million an episode. So, that is getting it up into cinema quality production range. And suddenly, it seems like the entire Lucasfilm strategy is pivoting as a result. And so that's basically what is kind of going on with Benioff and Weiss and Rian Johnson, and the fact that what's happening with them and also what's not happening, which is development on their movies right now, seems to suggest that Lucasfilm's strategy is definitely pivoting, and it's kind of exciting to realize. And it makes you think, well, if we've got the Mandalorian in 2019 and the Cassian Andor series in 2020, then it certainly seems like there's a call for a production in 2021 as well, and that means that they would start getting going on a new TV series that they would probably announce maybe in 2019, maybe even announce at Star Wars Celebration and say that production isn't going to start until 2020 on that one. Could be. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it, and let me know what you think about the idea of Lucasfilm pivoting to focus just as much on streaming television series as on cinematic features as well. That is going to do it for the show today, and I want to say thank you so much for joining me for it, and also for supporting this daily dose of Star Wars joy at patreon.com/SW7X7. For now, though, it just remains for me to say, may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2018 Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.